I am Vivienne, Angel of Democracy.
When you design something or make something, it's like doing magic.
Vivienne Westwood is the acknowledged mother of punk. She describes herself not as a fashion designer, but rather an anarchist. She likes to make the rich look poor and the poor look rich.
What you have to remember is that it's the very original ideas, the way she works fabric, the things she does each time which nobody's done before, that eventually ricochet down to even the high street.
I like women to be opulent and to flaunt their femininity. And I think it's natural to the human race to have very high heels, for example, and to change their bodies. People should wear what they want to wear at the end of the day. Some people don't care about fashion, but clothes do definitely make a difference to the way you feel.
Vivienne Isabel Swire was born on the 8th of April 1941. Her father worked as a cobbler and her mother worked at a nearby cotton mill. The eldest of 3 children, Vivienne grew up learning the Calvinist doctrine.
Oh, an ideal childhood, a mother who just adored me, living in the countryside.
This was in Derbyshire?
Yeah, the boundaries keep changing. It was in Cheshire at the time, 12 miles from Manchester, but the bottom of the Pennines, the most fantastic countryside.
When she was 17, her family moved to Harlow, a town in the northwestern suburbs of London. She briefly attended Harrow Art College, where she studied fashion and silversmithing, but left after 1 term, as she mistakenly thought a working-class girl like me couldn't possibly make a living in the art world. After seeing an advertisement for typewriting courses, she settled on becoming a secretary. She started working at a local factory to save money for these courses. However, she changed her mind and started studying to become a school teacher. Vivienne never let go of her passion for design. She'd come home at night and work on jewellery. On the weekends, she'd head to Portobello Road Market to sell her creations. This didn't mark the start of her career in fashion. She didn't make much money from her designs. However, it was her way of keeping her dream alive. Vivienne settled for a more practical life. And in 1962, this is what led her to marry Derek Westwood. He was working as an apprentice at a local factory. And whilst the two of them got along fine, Vivienne said that she didn't want to marry him, but was afraid of giving up on a sure thing. They got married, and a year later they had a son together. But ultimately, Vivienne got bored of her new domestic lifestyle. Deep down, she knew she wasn't reaching her full potential. She needed a drastic change. Vivienne's brother, Gordon Swire, introduced her to one of his closest friends, Malcolm McLaren. McLaren was living the life she had always wanted in many ways. He was an art student in London. His greatest passion was rock and roll, and he worked at a punk fashion boutique called Paradise Garage. They quietly began dating, and in 1965, she filed for divorce from her husband to be with Malcolm. She was now able to live the life she had always imagined. Although she was still working as a teacher, he gave her the excitement she sought. Malcolm and his friend Patrick Casey acquired Paradise Garage in 1971, taking full ownership of the store. The thing they did first was change the name to Let It Rock. which they believed better reflected the store's more rock and roll inclined clientele. The Teddy Boy subculture members were to be the store's only customers according to their plans. Teddy Boy subculture describes the British youth from this period who were deeply immersed in rock and roll. They shared a love of music, a collective spirit of rebelliousness, and a distinct way of dressing that included draped jackets, leather, and clunky shoes. Malcolm McLaren wanted his fashion to be at the forefront of the Teddy Boys style. Vivienne designed most of the clothes in the store. It was her first real foray into the fashion and design world. She primarily designed graphic t-shirts, but what distinguished hers was how provocative they were. Each piece had an underlying social or political message. She bleached her hair, wore the clothes she was making, and changed her entire style.
It's a question of how you feel. The point is to change yourself. And if
but why? Why does one have to change?
Because then you'll feel great.
She had previously worried that pursuing a career in the arts wouldn't be dependable, but she had now realised that she would never honestly know unless she tried. She soon turned into a full-time designer. She moved into more than just t-shirts once she settled into her new role, designing shoes, dresses, punk-inspired jackets. She found that as she grew, she faced more challenges regarding the shop's identity. The Teddy Boy subculture is what initially made the business popular. Vivienne anticipated this would pass quickly, and she disagreed with some of the subculture's philosophies. Vivienne supported rebellion if it was for a good cause, but the Teddy Boys had come to support rebellion for the sake of rebellion. To reinvent themselves, Vivienne and Malcolm reinvented their store to Too Fast to Live, Too Young to Die in 1973. They decided to rebrand the store again in 1974, this time to Sex. After realizing it was a bit of a mouthful, the name change was an intelligent marketing move. Easy to remember, short, and at the same time far more provocative than names prior. For the Teddy Boy community, Vivienne's new direction was too edgy and extreme. Because of this, she was able to create a new following which consisted of grunge rock fans. When designing new pieces, she would ask herself, if I was in a mosh pit at a rock concert right now, what would people be wearing? And then, taking whatever came to mind, she added her flair and turned the ideas into reality. In only a couple of years, Sex was one of England's most famous fashion boutiques. Rock and roll enthusiasts came to the city from all across the country, and it turns out that some future rock icons did as well. Malcolm wanted to venture into the music industry. His focus was managing musicians. The New York Dolls were an American band that he first managed, and Vivienne even had an opportunity to create some of their stage costumes. Shortly after, the group split up, leaving Malcolm looking for his next venture. He realised that most of England's top rock musicians were already approaching him. They all bought their clothing from the Sex boutique, so all he had to do was hang out there and identify the top performers. Before long, he recruited 2 customers, Paul Cook and Steve Jones, and 1 store employee, Glenn Matlock, to form a band. Not long after that, he recruited John Lydon, better known as Johnny Rotten. Together they formed the Sex Pistols, the name of the band being a direct reference to the Sex boutique.
People forget, you know, and in those days, I mean, you would be arrested for wearing those clothes. You know, at 9 years old, grown men would come and spit in my face in the street. Our windows were smashed at home. The NF would be outside, and you know, threatening us with death threats. That's what it was like. My mum's shop in the King's Road was continually smashed up by Chelsea fans. You know, when the Sex Pistols were #1, it was actually a blank on the charts because the establishment refused to.
Attire, just like she had done for the New York Dolls. They gained popularity, and so did Vivienne's designs.
It depends what you mean by hype. If it means really pushing things down people's throats by every kind of fiendish manner possible, then maybe there's a certain element of truth in that. But at the end of the day, you can't fool people. People either enjoy it by the act of discovering it for themselves, you know? And that can often happen through music or through a shop window or through being in a club and noticing someone who dances very well in a certain type of attire, and they begin to realise that person appears to them the epitome of doing something they want to do or looking like somebody they want to look like.
However, the Sex Pistols' stratospheric rise was cut short. The members were soon at odds with one another due to drug use and ego clashes. Malcolm found managing them to be a nightmare, and he completely stopped communicating with Johnny Rotten. The band disbanded after their tour was through. Sid Vicious overdosed and died just 1 year after their breakup.
Well, all I can say is that we really tried. Everybody tried to talk to him, Steve and Paul. And Malcolm even went to the extent of physically kidnapping Nancy at one time, knowing that she was an extremely bad influence on him in that direction. And certainly really tried everything he could do to talk to him. And you would get through to him, and then the next day you'd be back to square one again.
Vivienne helped shape the aesthetic of the entire punk rock movement. It may have been the end for this band, but Vivienne's story was only just getting started. After the Sex Pistols broke up, Vivienne was torn about where her fashion and creations would go next. She wanted to build off the momentum she gained by working with the group, but on the other, she wanted to establish an identity of her own. There was not a Vivienne Westwood label. She was making pieces as she pleased, selling them in the store or giving them to the Sex Pistols. In 1980, she began her rebranding effort. She renamed the boutique, making the 5th change in 10 years. Vivienne decided on the name World's End. With a new name came a new look. The look evolved into one of fashion's most recognizable storefronts. The World's End clock, with 13 hours on it, inspires a fantasy that is perfectly conducive to Vivienne as a designer. In 1981, Vivienne and Malcolm made their debut at London Fashion Week. The collection was called Pirates. Their designs were at the forefront of fashion's early 1980s neo-romantic movement. If she had presented a collection of dark, tight-fitting clothes, it would have left her further pigeonholed in the world of punk rock fashion. This movement led to a wave of nostalgia, featuring colourful masquerades of highwaymen, pirates, and other characters. Some people wore the pirate outfit, while many took elements from the collection and freely mixed them with other clothes. The tunic, with its powerful, meandering print, and the full-down stockings were particularly popular. She had a deep affinity for the craft of costume design, because most of her work up to this point had been creating things for people to perform in. This gave her confidence to choose a theme for the collection, and it worked. It was completely different to what other designers were creating at the time. It wasn't just a spectacle, the fashion choices were strong, and certain pieces, like the pirate boots, instantly became fan favourites. This was the collection that pushed Vivienne into the fashion industry spotlight.
What I do is very good, and I know that I've put 100% everything I can into it.
Vivienne, welcome. And the toga does actually feature quite a lot in your summer and your forthcoming winter collection, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What was the appeal to you?
Well, I think I shall go on featuring it anyway because it's such an original garment that I really just want to make full use of it. And every day I discover new possibilities. It can be that particular toga can be worn many different ways, and I'm doing some other slightly different togas that you can just have a lot of different outfits from the one garment. But the inspiration of that originally was. The people after the French Revolution wanted to forget the French court and the king. So they reverted to classical Greece, and they just wanted to look sort of classical again. And that dress began as something that a lady called a merveilleuse wore. But I've just made it much more easy to wear. It's like a T-shirt, really. It's a glorified T-shirt.
It is terribly comfortable, and you were saying, I mean, you can sort of chuck bits over shoulders, can't you? And what was the other look you were showing me? You sort of climb out of bits of it and throw other bits of it around. Is that right? Have I done that correctly?
You can put it around your head. You can do a lot of things with it. Loads of people wear them. I mean, from great big fat people to little thin people, from young people to old people, from people who you think who are obviously very fashion conscious to people who you may at first think weren't, and they get, you know, into it. They really...
You really don't think anybody could wear these garments?
Yeah, because when you put clothes on, they change you and you feel different, and a lot of people like that to happen to them.
Although everything appeared to be going well, the advantages of the sudden success did not last. Technically speaking, her first several collections were referred to as collaborations with McLaren. They were still partners, even though she was in control of the design. Thus, both of their names appeared in all branding and marketing, yet she was the centre of attention. And she has since said that Malcolm was incredibly envious of her and kept reminding her that she was a seamstress and couldn't have gotten where she was without him.
You have to go where you have to go, you have to do what you have to do, and I certainly don't want to be underground. I want to be at a place of the most focus that I can find.
For their personal and professional partnership, this marked the beginning of the end. They formally split up after their fall winter collection, Witches. Vivienne was going through a difficult period because she had been with Malcolm for almost 20 years. Although it may have been bittersweet, Witches was a massive success. It included a joint effort with renowned artist Keith Haring. This was a big deal on its own, but everything changed when Madonna spotted sporting items from the collection in a photo shoot. Although Vivienne was already well known in the fashion sector, this helped bring her name further into the public eye. By the end of the 1980s, Vivienne Westwood was a household name. She had heavily focused on quasi-costume design and punk fashion up until this period, but a chance encounter gave her an idea to try a more conventional, high-end aesthetic. She recalls seeing a young girl wearing a Harris Tweed jacket and carrying a bag containing her ballet shoes on a train. Given its reputation for being of the highest quality, Harris Tweed, a very special fabric, saw a surge in popularity at the beginning of the 20th century. To distinguish between genuine Harris Tweed and fake Harris Tweed, the Harris Tweed Authority was established in 1909. Authentic Harris Tweed, by definition, must be hand-woven by the islanders at their homes in the Outer Hebrides, finished in the Outer Hebrides, and made from pure virgin wool. The easiest way to spot Harris Tweed is the Authority's trademarked symbol of authentication, better known as the orb. If this symbol looks familiar, this orb design directly inspired Vivienne Westwood's now iconic logo. The girl on the train wearing a Harris Tweed jacket exuded a simple elegance despite the chaos surrounding her, and inspired Vivienne with her poise and composure. Harris Tweed's demand gradually decreased after it experienced a boom in the 1900s. By the late 1980s, it had all but disappeared from the market. But after spotting this girl, Vivienne decided to revive the past by designing an entire line of Harris Tweed clothing. The Harris Tweed Authority was pleased with Vivienne's decision and gave her permission to redesign their emblem as means of saying thanks, given her influence in the fashion world and the hopes that this would spark a rebirth. With that settled, she took the logo, made some slight alterations, and added a ring around the orb that is meant to symbolize the rings of Saturn. The two logos are similar. While the rings of Saturn stand for future of exploration and innovation, the classic orb logo signifies a heritage of tradition and craftsmanship.
Get my inspiration from tradition, traditional things, and technical things, and things that are established. But I find a way to do them which is exotic, meaning that nobody's ever quite seen that thing before. And that's the future bit that comes into it. And so it's a combination of traditional and future. I can give you an example of exactly how that works. I wanted, when I did my crinoline collection, the little crinny collection, and it was really new, I actually wanted to make it very, very childish, and I wanted to put a sort of Walt Disney feeling into it. And I chose very, very basic things. I chose very basic prints, like a polka dot, but I made that polka dot giant size. So that's something nobody'd ever quite seen before, a spot that size. And so by taking that future sort of idea, you make something that actually ends up in a little time and space of its own, and therefore it looks modern. I did the opposite with the hat. I made a very small. I mean, that's just one thing you can do, but you don't always, it's not a question always of scale, it's all kinds of other things.
The logo first appeared in the Harris Tweed line, which made its debut in 1987. Since then, it has been one of her signature design elements.
From the very day that one started to put holes in T-shirts, and especially I think this was an important thing. One day I made a T-shirt. A T-shirt is a T-shape like a body, but I put the hole for the head there, so that when you put it on, it didn't touch the body in the proper places. It was asymmetrical, it touched you, and it was baggy there, for instance. And once I'd done that, then all the kids had a field day making clothes that didn't fit properly, jackets with points that came out to you that would either fall off or get tucked in, long tube skirts that you could hardly walk in knits. I mean, I did all those things, and everybody else was doing them as well.
She wasted little time attempting to dominate the fashion industry as the 1990s began. In 1990, she made the official launch of her first male collection in an effort to grow her label. She had created men's clothing in the past during her time with the Sex Pistols and Teddy Boy era, but this was a major deal because it was the first time she had made it available to the general public after establishing her own label. Between this and the women's wear collections that she was putting out, there was no denying she was one of the industry's most innovative designers. In honour of that fact, she was named British Designer of the Year in 1991.
I never ever get nervous before a fashion show, I never have. Number one, it is that you're just working all the time anyway, but the thing is that there's just so much preparation and there's so much put into everything that by the time I've got here, I've done my best. There's nothing else I can do. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so there's nothing to be frightened of. If people don't like it, then, you know, I mean, in fact, to be honest, I'm the best critic of it. That's why I'm not nervous, because I know it's as good as I can do.
Queen Elizabeth II granted Vivienne the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire a year later, in 1992. This prestigious honour is only given to people who significantly contribute to British society.
People are very impressed by it. All the people who work with me are very pleased because they feel that they share in it.
Vivienne accepted the honour, but never being one for formalities, she went commando to the ceremony at Buckingham Palace. The only reason that we know this is that it was captured by the paparazzi.
You know, once I got an OBE and I didn't have any knickers. And the Queen loved it, for example.
What, did you tell her, or did you bend over and show her something?
No, somebody who worked with her said it was one of their best, what do you call it, investitures of giving people medals. They loved it.
In 2006, the Queen gave Vivienne an even higher honour by making her a dame, the female equivalent of being made a knight. It would be equally as exciting in 1993 when she wed Andreas Kronthaler. He wasn't well known and was Vivienne's design assistant when they got married. But as the director of her demi-couture line, he has steadily gained more notoriety over the years. This collection combines ready-to-wear and haute couture and was initially known as the Gold Label, but has now been renamed Andreas Kronthaler for Vivienne Westwood.
First time I did meet Naomi, she was 16 and she wanted to do my fashion show. And I didn't really believe that she would do it somehow. And but nevertheless, we were kind of hoping. And it was all on a very sort of small scale. And nobody really properly got in touch with Naomi. We were not very organised. And she went to my shop, so I'm told. Correct me if I'm wrong, Naomi, but she went to my shop on a Saturday morning because the shop manager kept it open and the show was later on, so he kept it open for half the day. And she went there and she said, "Can you tell me where Vivienne's fashion show is?" And he said, "Oh, you can't do that. You would be a bit too late for hair and makeup or whatever." So he just blew away this amazing model, which would have been so fantastic to have. And we were just thinking, oh, well, Naomi, she just said that. But in fact, she's an incredible woman. She always does what she says she'll do. And anyway, and I missed a big opportunity there.
Vivienne's relationship with Naomi Campbell is iconic. By the early 90s, she had no problem getting big-name models to walk in her runway shows. For her fall-winter 1993 show, she cast the legendary Naomi Campbell. It goes without saying that Naomi is one of the most prolific models of all time, and this was at the height of her career. So when she walked the runway that day, all eyes were on her. As she strutted down the runway for Vivienne's Anglomania collection, every model's worst nightmare became her reality as she lost her balance and fell to the ground. It may have been an accident, but photos of her smiling on the ground went viral, and this is looked back on as one of the most memorable moments in runway history. Just 1 year later, Vivienne produced another spectacular runway moment, this time with Kate Moss's assistance. Her career was at its peak at the time. Everyone was shocked when Vivienne sent Kate down the runway while she was dressed as a shirtless Marie Antoinette and licking an ice cream cone. Instead of taking this chance to advertise her clothing, Vivienne chose to utilize it to express her political views. People love Vivienne's designs, but more importantly, they love Vivienne. This is why she has always been able to stay relevant. In the early 2000s, Vivienne started speaking out more frequently about political and social issues, thanks to her position in the fashion industry. She has generated significant amounts for numerous charities through her label and has openly allied herself with numerous political groups and figures. In 2007, she made it clear what her opinion was on anti-terror laws.
Well, I just think that as a member of the public, I really feel most of the time that there's not very much you can do as one person to change anything, to make the world a better place. But I just think there's one thing that you absolutely have to fight for, and that is justice before the law. That's something that is the responsibility of everybody, because if you don't have that, you can't have democracy, you can't have liberty, you can't have civilization. I mean, this is what we're referring to. That it's not only the 19th century. I mean, these laws were fought for over periods. They were even implicit in Magna Carta, and it's why King Charles got his head chopped off, and it's why people pulled down the Bastille. And it's absolutely important that you can't have civilization without this freedom, this justice before the law. You can't have culture, you can't have anything without it. And apart from which, this T-shirt is really to ask the British people to use their imagination, what it would be like. You saw the little baby grow thing that I have as well. I mean, because that symbolises the future. These laws are going to be, you know, we have to do something about it.
As the century progressed, she became more climate conscious and questioned how we could change to make the brand more environmentally friendly. Climate Revolution, Vivienne's activist team and website, launched in 2010.
Well, we're joined now by the fashion designer and environmental campaigner Vivienne Westwood, who's passionate about highlighting climate change and how we source our energy. Earlier this month, she drove a tank up to David Cameron's constituency to protest about another controversial energy supply the government is pushing on with, fracking. Well, I mean, you've managed to hold up fracking for a bit, maybe permanently, but I doubt it. The big question is, if you don't have fracking, do you have nuclear?
You continue to have the energy source of supply that you've already got from Norway or France or wherever it is. There's no reason to have your own nuclear energy. There's no reason to have your own fossil fuel energy. There would be reason to develop your own green economy, because green renewable energy is getting cheaper and cheaper all the time.
But surely the big thing at the moment is we've got to reduce gas, we've got to reduce coal. And nuclear is potentially at least a kind of bridge between here and there.
Well, when is this bridge going to happen? I mean, these projects keep getting delayed and delayed. We might as well be building our green energy, which is guaranteed to get cheaper and cheaper, and it should be ready before these things even start.
Vivienne, your theme is really, one of the themes of your show this year is the uninhabitable land. I mean, what exactly are your concerns?
Well, this is the map, and this is the full picture of the world today, because unless we stop climate change, this is our immediate future. It can happen within a generation. That by the end of this century, there will only be 1 billion people left. You just draw a line here, level with Paris, and the green is habitable, the red is uninhabitable. So it's only a few people can live there. In what state, we don't know, in a state of war, lords, and God knows what. And this is what the politicians are planning for. They talk about climate change, saying they will handle climate change. They have no clue. They're the most ignorant, stupid people in the world. And unfortunately, we live in a world where somehow industrialism and consumerism, and we ended up with politicians who are the most ignorant people the world has ever known. And so the public are being constantly misled, but actually by organised lying, because what happens is that they're always fed little bits of information. You know, the ice is melting or whatever. They're never given the full picture. If you give people little bits of information, you're constantly distracting people with bits of information. When I show people this map, they're just confused. They think they're very shocked sometimes, but then they forget about it, because you know, that's what the propaganda is doing. It's just feeding them this non-stop distraction, and they don't know what's going on because they don't have time to form their opinions. They're being bombarded with partial information or rubbish, total lies. Urgency of what I'm talking about is so mind-bogglingly awful that we have to sort it out. That's it. I mean, I can't talk about fashion, it's my job, and it gives me an excuse to just say it is a revolution. Before, we've had class war, we've had rich against poor. Do you know what the division is now? It's idiots against eco warriors. That's it.
Her work made it to the big screen in the 2008 motion picture version of the television series Sex and the City. In the movie, Carrie Bradshaw and her longtime partner, Mr. Big, get engaged. She is asked to model wedding dresses because she writes for Vogue. And one of the designs is by Westwood. After receiving the dress as a gift, along with a personal note from Westwood, Carrie chooses to wear the Westwood outfit. In 2011, she was named Britain's greatest British fashion designer in a poll conducted by Greenall. Over 3,000 people voted, with Westwood scooping 24% of the national vote. Never shy of controversy, Westwood complained of the lack of style in society.
I think it's really, really important to dress up, not just to wear jeans. I'll give you an example of what I mean. My granddaughter, she turned up to meet me at the British Museum. She's 10. And we were going to look at those terracotta men, and she was wearing some jeans. And I had given her a really great pair of trousers for Christmas, and I said to her, oh, you know, I really didn't say anything to you, but I was hoping you'd wear your trousers. And, you know, I was just looking at her jeans, and she said, it's much more important that people are nice people than what they wear. And I said, rubbish. Regarding fashion, fashion is not, it is on the side of culture. It's very much to do with social life. And I can't say that it's, I'm not saying it's art terribly, it's too ephemeral, but it's definitely to do with your taste and showing the kind of person you are.
Beginning to put historicism to one side, Vivienne returned, exploring the natural dynamic of the fabric by treating it like a living, breathing mass. Activism was now her #1 priority. Her collections were used as vehicles for change. She was encouraging consumers to analyse and react to the climate crisis.
It's about quality, not quantity. That's the way to save the world. Stop consuming without choice. You've got to buy less, choose well, make it last.
She began using her clothes like a megaphone, a political warning that tells a story of a complex past and future fear. Vivienne Westwood passed away on December the 29th, leaving an incredible mark, not only on the fashion world, but also on culture at large. Westwood's reputation as a maverick was cemented by her own well-documented rebellious streak. From impersonating Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher on the cover of Tatler, to meeting the Queen with no panties on, to the controversial political slogans often printed on her T-shirts. Almost none of the runway trends were reflected in Westwood's designs. Instead, they were influenced by her own particular obsessions. She was always true to herself, but at the same time, she was constantly reinventing who she was. Westwood's political and fashion stances may have been what made her most punk. She warned us about climate change, opposed fracking, defended controversial characters like Julian Assange, and engaged in media-savvy stunts to promote her favourite causes, before the designer-turned-activist trend emerged. And as the person at the helm of the rare woman-led independent brand in fashion at the time, she was a feminist inspiration. Westwood's name is now beloved within the industry she aimed to disrupt. She was never interested in being remembered as an icon, as she stated cheekily in one interview. 10 years after I'm dead, nobody will even remember. It doesn't matter. I don't care. I just want to save the world. Westwood's trailblazing spirit will live on, not just in the fashion canon, but also in the next generation of designers who dare to challenge it, inventing new aesthetics and forms of dissent in the process.